Dr. Adam Starks, thank you so much for coming on Rappahannock Radio today. It's such an honor to have you on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kaya. It's been a while for sure. So I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, we have a connection. Well, we're both born and raised in Rappahannock County, correct? And then we have a connection through some mutual friends. And we probably haven't seen each other. I think we were trying to figure out, and it's been 10 years at least.
15 years, 10, 15 years.
That sounds about right. It just starts to flow by after a while.
It does. That's a thing about being an adult, is the time just starts to all mesh together.
Yes, it does. It's funny. I see that, and you probably see that with your children, but I definitely see it with my son. There's and I remember it myself, a rush, to kind of grow up and get on with things. And then now it's like we're fighting to slow down, weeks turn into months and years. And I remember my dad trying to say something like that, where he was like, you're going to miss it, slow down, you're going to miss it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what was I thinking? No one told me about those bills and all that hormonal stress and all that jazz.
Welcome to adulthood. Well, you have many titles here. You're an author, right? Mm-hmm. You're you're also a podcaster. You're an advocate for foster care children and their rights, and understanding where they're coming from, as you were a foster care child yourself. You are an inspirational speaker. I like that. I want to talk more about the idea of inspirational versus motivational.
Sure.
speaker.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've got so many different projects. You're CEO of, let me see if I can get this right, MNDYRR.
Yep, it's an acronym, and but pronounce it Mender. It's much easier, and you won't get tripped over the letters. And the story behind that, real quickly, is Mend and Mender, believe it or not, were taken. And I wanted, this app has been 7 years in the making, and so Broken Child Mended Man, I wanted that mended part in there. And so that was the best I could come up with.
But it's an acronym for, let's see, mentoring, nurturement for dynamic youth resilience and restoration. Right.
You got it.
I made myself a cheat sheet for that one.
yeah, you have to. It's long. It's that academic brain coming out. So hopefully I can get it to be part of the American lexicon. Just say Mender. So
I know, right? Language moves, especially with as we move into a more dependency on social media and, having our phones and everything. Language kind of, everybody wants a shortcut to how to say it. So you've got to have, it's got to be short and sweet.
Yeah. At least it's trendy. It's spelled incorrectly, and, it has, it has all that going with it. So
you have a hashtag for it?
Hashtag is just Mender right now.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk some about that app. So let's talk about your vision and your dream and how you came up with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was just released on Apple's iOS today. So I was really excited about that. I was in the middle of a meeting and, just giddy and just like, yes, it's finally happening. And it's been released on Android for a couple of weeks. And as I said in the beginning of the podcast, it's tied to my book. And one of the inspirations for my book was that there was so many people struggling, young adults struggling to cope, and child suicide rates were going up. And it was just things, I don't know. I know some people say maybe it's a calling or something like that, but all of this stuff was coming to me and I just felt compelled to act. And one of the ways to do that, the easiest way, was to tell my story. And, it is a story of inspiration, of resilience, and, just the entire human condition. There is a lot of suffering out there, but as that Helen Keller quote goes, there's also a lot of overcoming it. And that's what I wanted to focus on. And so the second part of that was creating an app. And I thought about it shortly after I finished my book, and then I just left it there, and I derailed. I tried to do a couple of things, starting a nonprofit in Pittsburgh, and then I moved to Philippi, West Virginia, and I started a restaurant. And that's what led to the Vulture book, which I know we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah.
But the app itself coming back, it's really coming back to what I should have been doing all along. And so one of the lessons I learned from my failed restaurant venture was I tried to take on too much on my own. And one of the reasons the app never got off the ground shortly after my book was because I thought I had to create the app. And that's not necessarily true. There are professionals out there. And so I hired a group of developers, and they had been working on it since December. And that literally took the idea out of my head and put it into this app. It was an amazing process to watch. And it was kind of cathartic for me because I do have trouble trusting people just from what I've been through. And just to see them do what they say they're going to do, I tell you, it was phenomenal.
You were like, wow.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. And, you know, I talk a lot about why I don't trust people in Vulture, but just watching this process, and it seems like all of the pieces are coming together. So it's something called API integration. And so there's other technologies out there for therapy that I can offer through my app. And so there's music therapy, there's, of course, mindfulness and yoga, but I mean, that's kind of overused now. I mean, I may incorporate mindfulness into it, but the music app,
everybody can identify with that. You know, the mindfulness and yoga kind of only reaches, you know, it's like learning, you know, right? Yeah. Everybody learns differently. Mm-hmm. Some are doers, some have to see it done, and then they have to do it with somebody. I mean, other people are totally visual. So, I mean, the mindfulness and yoga kind of only reaches like one aspect of people on there. But I feel like music is just, I mean, encompasses everything. Exactly.
And so there's the music therapy, there's art therapy, there's game therapy. So, and like you said, those catch other who are suffering from different types of depression or different types of anxiety. And there's one game I'm playing right now that I'm hoping to incorporate into the app by August that helps with alleviate symptoms of PTSD. So I'm just so excited about that. And then finally, I'll wrap it up right here, is there's a AI, artificial intelligence, therapy that's coming out. It's FDA approved, or it will be FDA approved. It's going through the process now. And I will be able to incorporate that into my app. So it's really on the cutting edge. And while technology may not have all of the solutions or all of the answers, it's really the great equalizer in terms of students who cannot access mental health care services. There's a shortage of estimated shortage of 4.5 million therapists and psychotherapists in the U.S. alone. And so what AI therapy will do is it's not taking jobs, but it's filling in a gap.
The gap.
Yeah, it's filling a huge gap. And if those shortages exist, which you know I tend to believe studies, if that shortage exists, children in rural areas and inner city areas are going to be the last to get the services that they need. And that's just a reality that we face in our social dynamic. And so I'm just thrilled that I was finally able to pull this off. I mean, I'm only in the beta phase now, but there are investors looking at it. There are social workers looking at it, because everyone will be able to come together, and this multi-purpose app will close all of those gaps so children stop slipping through. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so, well, I think it's brilliant. I mean, I was a little late to catching on to it and being like, I think one time I shared your post and you were like, yeah, it's already in development. I was like, well, this is amazing. Yeah. What I think, I mean, like you said, so, I mean, your cell phone isn't the answer to everything, but what's something that everybody has, and it's also so personal, and it's a way to bounce off those Ideas with somebody else without feeling like exposed.
Yeah.
You know, when people experience trauma, oftentimes, I mean, which you've overcome in an incredible way through your expression, but you know, there's an embarrassment there. There's a shame there. People don't want to talk about it. They're not necessarily encouraged to talk about it. I mean, unless you're in certain settings, right? So it's like it's access that's, like I said, almost every kid has a phone, right? So it's personalized. They can choose what works best for them. They can connect with people. And it's also, it's private. You know, it's their own connection. They don't have to find a ride to get to somewhere or feel like they have to go out of their comfort zone. You know, they can sit there in their room or wherever they are at that time and feel connected.
Exactly. And so there's two things here that it really alleviates. One is vulnerability. Now, anyone who has read my books know that I'm no stranger to just throwing it all out there. So
it's amazing.
Can learn from my mistakes and not have to go through the heartache and pain that I went through life, which is a painful learning process at times, right? And so the other thing is judgment. And, one of the things I've developed over the years is to just say, you know what, I don't care what people think of me. This is what I want to say, not being offensive or anything, but just saying, you know what, this is what happened to me. I want to talk about it because I don't want you to go through it. So vulnerability and judgment, all of that is alleviated, on their terms. And so these students or, the youth who use this app will feel empowered.
Yeah. So as you're creating it, you must be imagining what it would have been like for you to have a tool like this. I know it was a different time, right? We all didn't have our cell phones and stuff.
Right. It would have been a godsend because, one of the things I mentioned in Broken Child Mended Man was I did attempt suicide. And what this app does more than anything is takes students back from that edge, keeps them off of that edge and takes, that depression that's rising every day or anxiety or whatever they may be suffering from and keeping them at bay, letting them know that, this AI app will let them know that things will get better. And here are some coping mechanisms, until things get better. Just keep talking and keep venting to me because I've got you.
That's so powerful. Mm-hmm. How do you imagine? So I know you said you're in the beta phase. So will it be a free app?
It will be free for students.
Okay.
The youth, they can come on there and it's like social media. They're using Snapchat now. I can't even say Facebook. So my age now. Snapchat.
Or what's TikTok?
Exactly. It's all about positivity. And, cyberbullying is
a real deal.
Right. And it's unchecked on all of those platforms. And cyberbullying has led to far too many suicides among our youth. And so all of that will be axed here on this site. So this is a safe place for them to express themselves, find support groups, and just chat with AI bot if they want, and get what they need for their mental health and wellness.
Excellent. So it will be free. You said it just launched it's been on Android for a little while now.
Yeah, about 10 days. And then iOS today. So like I said, beta phase, there are going to be bugs to work out just like with any new app. From the beta phase, I have to go to the pilot phase. And so any of your listeners out there, I am talking to some counselors in Rappahannock and here where I live in Barber County. Unfortunately, right now they're just a little apprehensive about it, about being first and a variety of other issues. But there are 14 different cities, and some pretty large ones like Baltimore, Edinburgh, Texas, and Tampa Bay, Florida.
Wow.
That I have social workers who are interested in it. So I'm really excited about I don't think I'm going to have problems finding people for the pilot phase or groups for the pilot phase because it's a widespread problem to the point where the U.S. Surgeon General alerted us to it in January, and then President Biden's State of the Union address. There was a huge focus on mental health, especially for our youth, and so this app while it's not a silver bullet, it will help, alleviate some of the issues until we can get people the help that they need.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so. I'm excited to see it grow.
Yeah.
So let's see where to start. There's so many questions I want to ask you.
Go for it. I may have an answer. Let's see.
I guess I want to back up a little bit and say, and for people who have not read Broken Child, Mended Man, we want to tell them to do that, right? But also, absolutely. Where did you find your voice? Because it's one thing to rise up and, overcome. It's another thing to rise up and then turn back around and lend a helping hand, right, and tell your story. And, because a lot of people who have overcome obstacles, they don't want to talk about it. They're like, that was my past. I'm done with that. They haven't gotten back in touch with that younger form of themselves and really tried to work through, that heavy lifting of understanding what you went through and how you overcame it. So how did you find your voice? Yeah.
Well, strangely enough, that's a fantastic question, by the way, but strangely enough, I was reading a book titled Love, because one of the things I struggled with throughout my entire adult life, the book ends with me graduating college, success story, feel good moment. But I struggled with self-love. I just didn't, I didn't like myself. I never felt like I was enough. I never felt like I was successful, and I just kept pressing and working, and, it always led to a dead end. But, there was something spiritually, soulfully just missing, and that component was self-love. So I picked up a book by Leo Buscaglia titled Love, and one of the things that struck me was right in the beginning, talks about this girl coming from a nuclear family, and she goes off to college. She earned her first B ever and committed suicide. And it just struck me that this girl had nothing ever go wrong in her life, and that was the worst thing, and she couldn't cope with it. And it just, and from there, it was just a story about teen suicide and, children struggling, young adults suicide and struggling from their childhood. And I just got to thinking, I need to tell my story, because there's more to this. People are resilient by nature, but they have to be able to tap into it. And I hate this term now because it's overused, but I'm built different, or just cut from a different cloth. And that part, when people say, yeah, you're a little bit different, I know what they mean, but I can't pinpoint it. And so I figured sharing my story and letting people be able to relate to it themselves, I think that's been the most powerful element, because people have read it in prisons and on beachfronts, and it appeals to everyone. It's kind of like that Blue Jean book. Everyone wears blue jeans, rich, poor, all in between, and people can relate to it, right? Because life is hard. It is extremely hard, and I haven't even been through some of the worst stuff. It was just traumatic because, the beginning. But, I was placed in foster care. I was, well taken care of by my community. And were they perfect? No, no one is. And that's the appeal to my book, because what most foster autobiographies do is they're kind of angelic. They do no wrong, and they go through this, what I call just nightmare scenarios in the foster care system, because that, as we all know, is an imperfect system, but people are trying. Social workers are trying their damnedest to make sure that these kids are well cared for to the best of their ability with a limited set of resources. But,
and a high burnout rate.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
2 years
a high
or
burnout
something.
rate, because it's just impossible to take on what's going on in this country right now. And, some of my LinkedIn articles touch on that. If anyone looks for Mender on LinkedIn, you'll see 3 articles right now that touch on the underlying currents within our society that exacerbate these problems. We have to get back to a sense of community if we're going to address the problems with our children's mental health.
Right. It's not just one issue of, addiction or poverty or, those things compounded, loss of family. I mean, there's many reasons why children go into foster care. Yeah. And there are also many children that, exist unseen, who haven't been, even, I don't know how to put it, discovered.
Detected.
Detected. But what is it now? We're almost up to like half a million.
Yeah, on any given day, there's at least 500,000 in the foster care system awaiting adoption.
Just in the United States alone.
Yeah, right.
I mean, so you going through that, I mean, and then, like you said, having a success story,
right.
Going through and being able to overcome, you really wanted to tell people that it was doable. I mean, right. and to get out, that you could do better, not necessarily that like the goal is to become what you've become, although that's great. What you become is incredible. But you know what I mean? Because I think sometimes the downside of hearing, I see some people's response when they hear these incredible success stories, they're kind of like, sort of like what you said, well, you're different.
Right.
You must just be different. That was a special, it's sort of like, and, we could segue, although I don't want to yet because I'm enjoying this, into Vultured with this, the idea of, the fading American dream, right? I mean, it's become unattainable in a lot of ways. I mean, do you draw, having just come out of that experience recently with trying to start a small business in a small town, and basically, everything is, the odds are stacked against you, as you say, although you try and remain, how do you put it? Cautiously optimistic. Yeah. You're constantly cautiously optimistic. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't really trust anybody, but I want to give people a chance, because if you don't give some people a chance, you might be the only person who did give them a chance.
Right.
So coming out of those two things, like the people struggling to make it, and then children and families struggling to, pull themselves together in a sort of way that is, that's not a breakdown of the familial structure. Do you see those two things kind of aligning a little bit? Do you draw, because I mean, you started talking about different problems that are the underlying causes in our society here. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you think, I know one of the biggest things right now is the opioid crisis, for many reasons, and it's causing a lot of children to go into foster care. But I mean, what is the underlying structure of that? Is it because people feel like they can't, there's no mobility, like they're caught in something? I mean, what do you think?
That is just such a fantastic question. And I think if I had the answer to that, I'd be the president right now. It's so complex. And
I know it is. And I was afraid to ask it. It's a necessary
question. And I really think it comes down to, we've always done it this way. And that phrase irks me to no end, because, it's pining. I love nostalgia just as much as the next person, but, I'm not going to play, my children, I've tried to get them interested in my original Nintendo for years now. They don't care. Like, that's the way it was done, back in my day. Those were the good old days for me. But just using that as an example, the way that we've always done things and continuing to do it, seeing the suffering compounding, and then throwing a pandemic on top of that, which exposed all of our vulnerabilities, all of them.
Right.
We have a small window of opportunity now to do things differently. And we're going to have to, if we are going to reach the potential that I know is in this country.
Yeah. I know there's so many different things. You can feel like where to start with that.
Yeah, we could talk about this for a week and
and still not get, quote unquote, get anywhere. because it's very, well, I mean, just coming out of the pandemic and that whole stress of the world. I mean, it's one thing for adults to go, okay, you know, the world could end at any time, right? We're on this precipice of the quote unquote apocalypse, but then for children, and really, I mean, it was completely unveiled for kids. I mean, it was hard to hide, right? That it threw off their normal routine. You can't go to school anymore. You can't, you know, go see your friends. You can't go see your grandparents. I mean, everybody has been touched by that. So,
sure. Sorry, those are my crazy cats. They're after each other.
I know you can't have a meeting nowadays without the cats being involved. I'm surprised they're not walking.
Yeah, I'm surprised they're not, you know, have their butt in my face or something.
So, going back then to Mender, right? Mm-hmm. Coming out of the pandemic and talking about these underlying problems and all of that. I mean, so you see tapping in, because a lot of people will be like, oh, social media, you know, it's so bad. Like you said, there's the bullying, it's unchecked aggression. Most people are going to say things on there they probably wouldn't say to your face just because they have the veil of a phone there and not actually trying to connect to another human being. But the way you see it is a positive. And like, that's one of the things you're talking about, moving forward with positive change. And we have this moment here where we're at a crossroads. Let's utilize what we have, what we know, but then format it to how we can use it to better ourselves and our community, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you briefly touched on this, the burnout rate. I mean, right now, social workers, teachers, and anyone involved in the child welfare industry, they are overwhelmed and they're quitting in droves. And this app, like I said, it's a multi-purpose app. It takes some of that admin stress and it puts it to the side. And so it will take notes automatically. It will generate reports for them, the necessary reports. And so that's the value of it for them. And then
for the administrative side.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's where a lot of the burnout comes from.
Right. And taking on a lot of, I mean, anybody who has worked with, I mean, I was just a teacher for a brief period of time at an alternative school. And oftentimes you see a lot of kids with different, I don't want to say issues because I don't want to label them that way, but they don't fit into the normal place in public schools. And so a lot of times, you know, these alternative schools, Waldorf, you know, different methods like that become a place, like a last hope for a lot of kids. And I saw it in my 3 years teaching. And I mean, honestly, I'm not going to lie about it. I mean, I took a lot of their problems home. It was hard not to be thinking about, you know, where they were going to find solutions, you know, how they were, and I did everything I could, but still, I mean, you reach certain blockades that an individual, you know, you can only do so much there. So I love the idea of seeing this app help with that and help to kind of do like what you were saying. The more it'll create reports, it'll do all that sort of processing. So then, you know, the people who are working to try and find safer places, safer homes for these children and find them solutions can really hold space for that and not so much. I mean, yes, they're going to have to do the paperwork and everything that's involved with that, but it to take some of the pressure off.
Right. And that's where a lot of it, the pressure comes from, is the bureaucracy of it all. I mean, it's massive and it's overwhelming to anyone involved.
Do you think that, I mean, this is kind of going back to the earlier question, which is it's hard to pinpoint how to answer that. But so, I mean, again, I keep going back to that number in my head. And you said, you know, any given day, it's about 500,000 children in foster care service. I mean, how do we get to that ridiculous, you know, has it always been this way, or it seems to be on the rise? I mean, it's
I think it's always been this way. I mean, there's always a social crisis. At least it has been, you know, since the 80s, whether it's drugs or poverty. I mean, that's where most of it comes from. But poverty, I don't know what else to say about it other than it's the poverty, stupid. And if we don't solve that problem, we're not going to, taking the kids out of a home and putting them into another home isn't going to solve the underlying crisis of poverty. Right. There's always that debate, well, people don't want to work. That's not necessarily true. They can't afford to work because the wages are so low. And, I was talking to my oldest son this morning. Someone had a flat tire. I said, in some cases, for some families, looking at the car, that could be devastating. If they were on their way to work and have to spend $250 on a tire and they're only earning $8.75 an hour, think about how many hours that they have to work just to replace that one tire. That means someone's not going to eat. And that means they may not be able to afford gas right now to get to that job in the next county over. But people don't think about it like that. They think about, well, I just want my taco, and I'm having to wait 15 minutes for it because they're short staffed. And it's so much more complex than that. But getting back to your point, if we don't change how things are done now, it's only going to continue to get worse. And no matter how many children we pull out of homes, there aren't enough homes out there to take them in. So now you've created not one, but two problems. And when I say you, I mean society. Yeah. Our society has created, two problems for a child, and neither one is its fault. Right. And they're left to cope with it. And they may have access to a therapist, but in this day and age, probably not.
And a lot of them, as in your case, you were told you were going to go see a movie.
Right.
They're not included, which, a lot of people are going to say, or I could hear a lot of, play devil's advocate on that saying, well, how are you supposed to explain to them that they're going to leave their home and not go back to it? I think there has to be some sort of inclusion in the process rather than just...
Well, lying to children isn't, and I know it alleviates the problem right there, but long term, what that did was make me distrust authority.
Right, suspicious.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's human nature. But at the same time, people underestimate how much children actually understand. As an adult, you say, oh, well, they can't possibly understand that.
They pick up a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're going to emulate what they see. And what I mean by that is, as a parent, one thing, I always caught myself doing was, scolding my son because he's acting like me. When I was that
age, you're like, wait a minute.
I was like, I'm yelling at myself, and all I can think about is my foster mother saying, "Boy, you're going to reap what you sow. You just wait." And here it is, karma coming back, tenfold, and I laugh at it, but that's the reality of looking at life through their lens. Is they understand so much that I'm just fascinated with how their minds work and watching them process things and trusting them to come to the right conclusion, which is hard because one of the things I was talking to my middle child the other day. I was like, I don't want you to struggle like I did. I don't want you to be like me. And what I meant by that was, he's hard-headed. He's just like I was, right? But I want him to know that he's going to have to apply himself, so he doesn't have to settle, for situations like I had to throughout my adult life. He's a brilliant child. He's had everything at his disposal, whether it's science kits or, clothes, things that I had to worry about. Food. Yeah. I'm always fussing at him about having food in his room. I didn't have that luxury. I was picking, when he says I don't like something, I was like, boy, I was picking roaches out of cornflakes and pouring water on them. I was like, you're not going to get any sympathy from me. I'm sorry. It's just eat it, don't eat it,
Like, this isn't a restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not the chef. I'm just,
But it brings up something you talk about in your podcast, Fostering Success, and then, just something that in general about your perspective and what you talked about that book, that really inspired you to develop your voice and to go back through it and write your book, Broken Child, Mended Man. The book, I think it was Love, right? Where this girl had this, pretty mundane in most people would say thing happen to her, and she freaked out and just totally, went off the deep end and made a regrettable decision. But again, it comes from the perspective of everybody has their own struggle. Like, for some people, that threshold is extremely high. Like, they can take a lot, and you have taken a lot. And it's probably some of your bullheadedness that kept you, as a coping mechanism, survival. You pushed on through. But for other people, they struggle just to get out of bed, even though they might, that's the tricky thing about mental health, right? And I'm not saying anything about your middle child having, but everybody struggles with that. I don't think, I think sometimes we have to do a lot of, and I'm sure you do it a lot as well in your work when you go and have these, keynote speaking conferences and you get up in front of everybody and you talk about your experience and how you try and change how people approach, the wounded, the victimized, and how you try to change that narrative and do a lot of myth busting there, because I think a lot of times people will just assume that you have everything, you're fine.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
What does that actually mean? Everybody has a different level of what they can take and different anxiety. And some people are totally, some people can get up and look at the world and look at the news and everything and be like, oh God, where are we going? That really sucks. And other people are like, they're freaking out. They can feel like the whole pressure, the weight of humanity and what seems to be spiraling out of control in a lot of ways. And they can't even walk out their front door,
right. So. Yeah, exactly. And I had to stop. I stopped watching the news in 2013 just because I did. I felt like that. I felt absolutely powerless and worthless because I could not address the problems that the world was facing. And that's just how I processed the news. And I didn't want, if I was going to be anything in this life, I couldn't start each day that depressed, because there was just no way for me to cope with it. And it's not that I don't consume news, but I just do it in spurts.
Right.
I know about the war in Ukraine, but guess what? I can't do anything about that. And so, I'll make a donation or something like that, or, I'll focus on the problem that I can control, right. And that's where the app comes in. And so,
well, go ahead.
I was just going to finish up with saying, by picking that one problem, that's, to me, if I have to choose my legacy, this is something that I can be proud of. And this is something that is not just close to my heart because of what I went through, but it also means that I can help I can contribute in a meaningful way.
Right.
To just one of the many challenges and issues out there.
Well, you have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You have to start somewhere, and this is something that you can build. You do have the power to build, and you have built, and you're launching now, and it's very exciting. But you also do a lot of work within your hometown. Right? You're on the school board.
Yeah.
You're constantly going out and interacting with people and getting, you people can hire you as a coach. They can come in, you can come in and you're an inspirational speaker, right? Talk a little bit about how,
Sure.
What's the difference between inspirational and motivational? Why did you choose those?
Yeah, absolutely. And what a great question. But I always get long-winded on questions like
I do too.
So motivational, to keep it short, motivate, because I know we have a lot to talk about. Motivation is temporary, right? Okay. Motivation, to me, and I hope I can make this make sense because it makes sense in my head right now. But motivation is temporary. If I get up, I just built a patio, for example. And when I started it, I was really motivated. And then it got cold. So the circumstances changed, right? Mm-hmm. I was like, I'm not doing this out in the cold. I said, why did I start a patio project in the fall? I'll come back to this. Warmed up a little bit, right? So the last couple of weeks, I have just been zeroed in on nothing but this. I'll work on my app. I'm like, okay, I'm going out to the patio for 3 hours. I'm going to work on this. But inspiration is when you know what you're doing is right. And so and that inspiration can come from anywhere. It can come from a speech. It can come from a book. It can come from a family member, a friend. But right in that moment, that something awakens a lot. It's alive inside of you, and you're thinking, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do because I'm inspired. This is where I'm going to help. So I'm going to be a child advocate. I'm going to start by telling my story, and then I'm going to join, some foster care organizations and see what I can do that way. And that, even though I was doing all of that, it still didn't feel like enough. But now that I've zeroed in on this app, an idea that I had 7 years ago, but now it's finally coming to fruition. Now I feel inspired. And now I can get my head up off that pillow every day and wake up and know that I'm working towards a higher purpose, something bigger than myself.
It's so beautiful. The world needs more people like you, Adam. It really does. But I know it's been a tough road, and I know you're very hard on yourself. You still are. just reading, to segue a little bit further into your most recent, publication into into Vultured here.
Yeah, I still love that cover.
It's a great cover. But it reads, first of all, for people who haven't read it yet, it reads just like our conversation right now. It blends brilliance, vulnerability with you're very comical. It's very approachable. I think
my self-therapy.
Well, and your expression has been your therapy. So many times in this, it's like, not to spoil it, but you say kind of in when you talk about this, that it's a personal and unconventional lesson from a former small business owner. So, we know right away that it didn't work out as planned, right? But the whole time, it's like you want to keep this ship afloat, not just for yourself. Because somebody who's had so many great successes like you, Adam. You'd think that you would be like, okay, I understand it didn't work, especially as soon as it ran into COVID. Although there were problems leading up to it, right? But ran into COVID, it was like, okay, it would be understandable if I tried this venture for about 2 years, I think it was, and it didn't go as planned. And, now I'll go back to, being a professor, or I'll go, to many of the other skills that you have. But you were and that's what I mean by you're so hard on yourself. You were like, this is a pillar for the community. This is, I'm, there are so many people that count on me. There's so many people that depend. It's like you have built yourself up to be the person that you wish that you had growing up.
Yeah,
you want to be the person that you would look up to, like the child Adam would look up to and be like, wow, that dude is like.
Yeah, exactly. But it leads to that, and sometimes that leads to blind ambition, and I think I can do everything. I feel like I'm Superman sometimes, and so when the mayor approached me about that idea. And, I saw all of this beautiful potential walking down Main Street. Now, if you talk to some of the locals here, they will say, once upon a time, this was a hustling, bustling Main Street. And that's evident from all of the buildings, once upon a time. But that didn't mean that the potential's still not there. It certainly is. And I felt that. And, we lived it for a while. It was a lot of fun, but it was also, as anyone who read the book knows, that I did not project that stress onto other people because I wanted them to enjoy themselves.
Right.
And for me, it made me feel normal to be able to bring joy, even though I was miserable inside.
I feel totally normal.
Yeah, totally normal. I was able to bring joy into this community that hadn't been experienced for too many people. And, or not necessarily that, but, they would have to travel pretty far.
Right.
Over a mountain range or, through multiple cities to get where they wanted to go for simple entertainment.
Right. There's something to be said about, and this kind of connects to what we were talking about earlier and the breakdown of, where we're going as a community. You have to start small. You have to, work with your community, right. If you expect the larger community to do well, right? You have to make these small changes right in your backyard to bring people together if you want people to be cohesive as a nation. And really that's what your work was, trying to achieve. You're like, let's get good food, let's get some good people together. Let's get, we've got the musicians on board. I mean, helping support so many different, I don't want to say lost professions, but unseen professions. I mean, how often have you seen people be like, oh, okay, you're a musician. Like, what's your day job? Or you're a cook, or you know what I mean? These are really important roles in our society that are often overlooked, and people are just kind of, they're not really empowered. And I think that there's a great blessing and a need for people who do go on to become professors and doctors of many types. But there's also, people, I think, overlook the common man, the common woman oftentimes, and will just be like, well, you should shoot higher up or something like that instead of like,
exactly.
And so you bringing this community together around, this town that is, what is it, lackluster? It's not what it once was.
Yeah, it just, it's past its heyday. I mean, the roads, there's a bypass that wasn't there 30 years ago. There's two major roads that, cut away from the community. And it's just kind of like that scene in Cars. I don't know. Yeah,
I was going to say my son does love that movie. And they talk about it. Mm-hmm. They completely forgot about it. The highway came through and nobody went on Route 66 anymore.
Exactly. So, and Philippi is like that. It just, good folks, a lot of good folks still here. And, they remember, when that building had a different sort of magic in it. They would come and get the penny candies and, sit on the furniture and all that stuff. And, I was able to restore that magic, even if it was for a short time. The magic is still there in that building. And, I just couldn't pull it together. Like I said, even though it failed because of COVID, it was, I'm very open about it was on life support before that because of a variety of problems that I just didn't foresee.
Well, there are a lot of traps that are sort of set up there for small business owners that are easy to, and people could use it as a, I don't know how you feel about this word, but as a Bible, so to speak, for entrepreneurs looking to, to start a business. Because, I mean, even if you're not trying to start a venue like this, that's, actual brick and mortar restaurant, but just in general, the pitfalls that you can make. I mean, we talk about, so it's called Vultured, and you talk about the vultures that await people who are starting businesses, who have an idea, right? And there's not only the big tycoon vultures, but they exist at every level, right? And we're talking vulturing your time, your money, I mean, and even down to your mental health and your well-being.
Yeah. I mean, the community nonprofits that are supposed to help with economic development, they vultured my time, like you said. It's just, I mean, there were so many hoops to jump through, and they never intended to give me the capital that I needed access to. And that led to, going to predatory lenders, because now I had something that was important to the community. And I felt like I was being depended on to, continue to provide this. And I put a lot of pressure on myself. And, I was doing it for a while until, I just couldn't do it anymore.
And you really didn't have this book also provides, that's why I use the word Bibles. It's a North Star for people. It's a cautionary tale, but so you didn't have anybody to go to be like, how does this all work? You're just basically feeling your way around it in the dark, to discover that, hey, maybe we don't have to get the expensive, linens and stuff like that, right? The expensive sound system, right? You can't, you can't have a champagne dreams on a
on a Bud Light budget is what they call it around here. So,
right, and Bud Light isn't even cheap. Sorry.
No, exactly. Much cheaper than champagne, though.
That's true.
But yeah, and like I said, it's just really about avoiding all of the pitfalls, because you think about Wall Street being vultures, but there are just vultures around every corner, and you really have to protect your own interests and negotiate on your behalf, because those companies that you think are looking out for you are not. Everything from the uniforms to the food. I was just grossly overcharged, and I don't know if it was comparable to other businesses in the area, but there was a lot of stuff that I was sold that I just didn't need.
Yeah.
And me being big, ambitious, and wanting people to have the best experience, I went for it.
Yeah. And when you have a lot of, let me back up here to see. So when I think about this book, and as I'm pouring through it again this morning to be like, okay, we'll come up with some good questions for Adam. I think about how hard it is, one, to have, to believe in yourself. Yeah. Right. And that's something that, like, you were honest from the beginning, you were authentic and said to myself and to our audience that, self-love is a difficult thing. It's been difficult for you, and it's, it can be a struggle, whether you dwell in that or that comes in waves. It's difficult. And especially coming up with your own idea, right? With an original idea, unique idea, and believing in that idea. So that's step one, right? And then step two is if you can get people to believe in your vision, right. And then you've got the people who are like, are they really believers, or are they trying to edge their way in? It's such a, and for someone like yourself, right, where you're in a very difficult position, as in, you don't have you have a history of mistrust with people, right? So that was hard to trust certain people. But at the same time, you want to believe, I see you as someone who sees the best in people and sees the potential. You want to
believe the best in people. that's how I survive, right?
Right.
You can't just go around saying, just being suspicious, because then, that trails into a different kind of mental trap. That,
right.
That makes it would only make me suffer more than, just trying to be vulnerable and trust people. And unfortunately, it just doesn't always work out.
So coming out of that experience of owning Wanderlust and writing this book, and obviously there's some, with the bigger companies and the, what are they called? The MCAs.
Yeah, the merchant capital advances,
which are that's it's unreal what they do. But with that, that's a pretty, people could be like, oh yeah, ding, avoid that, right, when they're building their own business. But absolutely. It's much more difficult when you talk about the individuals that worked for you and who were positive for the business, and the individuals who were negative for the business. And you're always going to find that. But I'm just curious, you're an intelligent man and your experience. Do you have any advice for people? How do you weed out who you can trust, and who, is it always going to be basically trial and error?
The unfortunate reality, to answer your question directly, which I don't think I've done here yet in this interview, is it's trial and error. It really is. I mean, there are a lot of fancy HR systems out there. Obviously, I couldn't afford it because I spent all my money on a sound system. But
and I don't see you as someone who would use those systems anyways, because you'd be like, oh, great, someone who maybe just doesn't test well. I completely denied a job.
Yeah, well, and that would be me. I do not test well. I do not come out in those tests favorable because I am an individual thinker. A lot of organizations look for that fit, that organizational fit. And I just think it's a fancy academic term for, another form of discrimination, and not just against blacks, but against anyone who thinks differently. And that's, to me, unacceptable. And so I met a lot of amazing people through this process, and I met a lot of interesting characters as well. And so I hired a little mix of both, but one of the things I'm proud of was I would give people a chance here who, other businesses wouldn't give a chance. And, it's a small town, so everyone knows everyone, but people deserve a chance at redemption as well. And I was able to get at least 4 people get the trajectory of their lives to go upward because I gave them a chance. And did they stick with me? No. And did things always work out? No. But unless we give people a chance, we don't know. And the little bit of time that I spent with some of them were 6 months, some of them were a year or a little bit longer. They showed me that they can do it if someone would just give them a chance.
That's so important. And it's funny that talking about the those tests and stuff, because I don't know when the last time you were on Indeed, but whenever I go on there, they have all the ways to weed people out.
Yeah, right.
Basically, which I think oftentimes it does just that. And I think it limits a lot of people. A lot of people who could do the job probably won't sit there and go through the little aptitude tests that Indeed is asking for. And so in that, then you're basically just creating or recreating, re-indenturing like a serfdom society where it's like you can only stay in this level and that's it, because nobody's going to give you a chance. I mean, my husband is going through it right now. He's been in back of the house food service his entire career, worked in kitchens.
Right.
It's really hard to move out of that. I mean, and not a lot of people are going to give you a chance in a different field because they're going to be like, oh, well, you're a chef and you're like, you're stuck in that. So
that's unfortunate.
It can be.
Yeah. and I wish I had the answer for it. I mean, because I'm going through, or I've been through that same process. You were a restaurant manager, and people who say that don't understand how sophisticated that role has to be.
You go, oh, okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's HR, it's accounting, it's, customer service, it's employee relations and community relations. And there's so many moving parts, and, it takes a lot of work.
Right. It's sales. I mean, I applied for a job not too long ago, and they were saying, well, what's your background in sales? And I said, well, I've been a waitress for about 10 plus years on and off of my life. And they're like, well, that's not really the same thing. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. I was like, have you tried it? Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
If you want to be able to push that special. But so, and I know I've asked you a lot of difficult questions here. So when you're like,
I'm enjoying myself. So yeah, I'm not talking to my dogs and cats. So this is awesome.
Well, thank you. Step up from the dogs and cats.
Absolutely.
Well, when you said you haven't answered my questions directly, I haven't been asking really direct questions because
that's true. But I know I can get long-winded, so I'm sitting here in my mind. All right, Adam, circle back. Turn up the cats and make some sense.
I think that going back to the idea of somebody who thinks outside the box, I think that's can be a challenge for people who think outside the box, because we tend to, at least I do, I don't know if you can relate to this, but look for overarching, structures as to, themes as to why certain things in society work a certain way, or patterns. And so it's hard then to just pinpoint the one idea that you want without taking a route of all these other ideas. Exactly. But I want to get back to Vultured and talk about, so I really like, and you tell me if I need to edit this out later, if you're going to be like, you're spoiling it for it.
Go for it.
Having had that experience and you didn't have any guidance during it, I mean, and really you got into a situation where then you couldn't receive any funds, because then they're like, well, you haven't paid your taxes. And it's like, well, I haven't paid my taxes because I don't have any funds. So it's a never ending cycle there. Exactly. And you kind of get stuck in that. And I liked your idea because you are a problem solver. And that's why I felt so bold I could ask all these questions too. You have a great solution at the end of the book, right? Mm-hmm. Where you talk about having a nonprofit organization where you would be able, and it would be independent, right? So you're not dealing with these other with these banks and so on and so forth, right? So I guess in some ways it would be kind of similar to other nonprofits like Habitat for Humanity or something, where everything that is paid back goes back into the piggy bank of that nonprofit organization to then lend out to other small business entrepreneurs, right? Yes. And they would have to complete a course in order to receive these funds, and whether or not they received it would be how they performed in the course. Mm-hmm. And then what I loved about it, this is why I started talking about the common man a little bit, and my experience waitressing and my husband's experience with, cooking and stuff is oftentimes you work for these companies, you care about them, but you really have, at the end of the day, not everybody is lucky enough to get a manager and owner like you, Adam. And so at the end of the day, you're disposable, right? I mean, so you have the idea of these small businesses lending from this nonprofit organization. But then what you have is investment on the workers' part, right? Yeah. They actually get a little piece, like stock in that company, and are able to, like they own a piece of it, which I think really engenders harder work, more, not that you're not already working hard, but trust. Yeah, a buy-in. Like you're like, of course I'm going to work for this company because, I own a piece of it. I feel a part of it and I feel valued, and not just like another worker that, is a dime a dozen, which I think happens all the time. Yeah.
And one of the things that I was briefly, and I mean briefly, hesitant about writing this book because, I have all of this education. I have an MBA. I have my PhD in organizational leadership. How did I fail so spectacularly here? And I thought to myself, well, everything I went through, none of it was in my textbooks. None of it. I mean, all of it. I'm not saying that my education was useless, but what I'm saying is that there is no substitute for experience. Right. And so what I did, and I wrote in a conversational, writing voice, because I want people to know that, it's the everyday man out there, or everyday woman out there operating these businesses, and that's who you're interacting with. It's not textbook. It's just not.
Right.
And, I took entrepreneurship classes. I don't remember them talking about the extra taxes that I would have to pay as an employer and then on behalf of my employees, which set me up. It set me up for failure right off the get-go, because there was 16.5% of my labor budget that I did not have on the line, because I just assumed that I was only paying taxes on behalf of my employees. I didn't realize I had to pay some of them twice per pay period. Yeah, it's rough. Well, yeah. And so the idea behind this nonprofit is that, we're going to help you every step of the way. If should I get this extra package that this uniform company is offering me. And, we can, as coaches, walk them through that process. So here's what's going to happen if you take that, and and here's how much more money you're going to have to make, and you're going to have to put that upcharge on this product and sell it to your customer to make up money for that. So in your mind, is it worth it? As we say, yes, we go, okay. And, we can revisit that in terms of lessons learned or what have you. But more importantly, they would have access to the capital that they need, so they wouldn't be taken advantage of by MCA companies, and wouldn't have to worry about, disingenuous economic development firms that really just seem to collect money from the federal government and then just sit on it.
Right. And what kind of taxes do they have to pay?
Right. Yeah. I'm sure not near what I had to pay. My goodness. Woo. Boy, mercy. Right.
One of my, there are many favorite parts that I have in the book where your humor really shows through, even though at times you're going, is this, a conspiracy theory set up to mess with me?
What? People are trying to drive me crazy. I convinced myself of it at one point. And then, I talked about in Broken Child Mended Man, my mother suffering from paranoid schizophrenia. And I'm just sitting here wondering if I should get checked out, because this can't be happening to me. It was Murphy's Law the entire time I was running this thing. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and it was. But
you had a lot great success as well.
Yeah.
You had some, sold out nights with 200 people in the house.
Yeah, 200, 300 people, and those nights were just absolutely amazing. And the memories that were created were outstanding. We had everything from murder mystery dinners, comedy nights. We had ladies in there knitting and book clubs, and not my ideas. Those were ideas that were coming from the community. Yeah, I don't knit, so there you go. But I loved them because they would come in, they would order food, and they were always so complimentary and just so patient. And if we did have a night where we were short-staffed, and they were just good, the best of what this community in Philippi, West Virginia had to offer.
That's excellent. Mm-hmm. I love the part where you're talking about, and this really resonated with me while I'm trying to work on building Rappahannock Radio as a company, is you're talking about the different, sort of glossy decisions that you can make where glossy, shiny, sort of like, what is it? The email, all the where you can send out a group email to all these people. Yeah. And I think the return on it was something like 7% or very, very low. And you were like, we'll never talk about this colossal waste of time.
Yeah. Oh man, I put so much time into those
the email blasts.
Yeah. And no one opened it. No one cared.
Yeah. Or like, and I resonate with that because I've seen it happen. I put, at the beginning of launching this forum where, it's always free to the artist, and I will always, have the guest speakers, they're never going to have to pay for Rappahannock Radio. But what I want to do was try and build a company for me and my family and have it be where, I did 3 seasons of free content, and I started to be like, well, I think what I provide is worth, charging a subscription. Sure. And in return, you'll have, you can get exclusive discounts from local businesses and, really make it so I can support this kind of content while also, having a job for myself. And I made those email blasts, and nobody, and you have to pay extra for those. On a lot of these websites, you have to pay extra for the package. And it's like, it really eats into your bottom line. Is it worth it? The extra $30 a month, even though it might just be $30, when you're scraping along.
It can go somewhere else. Yeah. It can be better utilized somewhere else. And so, email letters like that are, I can't say anything positive right now about them, so I'll just leave it there.
Or the Facebook stuff, like where you said, you at one point you had, over 250 people or something interested in an event, and I think only like 60 people turned out.
Yeah. And
it's hard to judge.
It was a princess party, because my daughter wanted the princess party. I was like, you know what?
You're like, yes, events, I'll give you a princess party.
Yes. I was like, those puppy dog brown eyes, yeah, I can't say no to her. So I had this princess party, and, it was very well received to the people who actually showed up. But, I mean, I spent a lot of money because there were a lot of princesses running around, that massive space. Yeah. And then there was a murder mystery dinner that really scared me because it had over 600 people. And we had a capacity of 300. So I thought were just going to be maxed out. And so I started preparing a dinner for 200 people. No, I'm sorry, for 200 people, and only 90 showed up. And so, that eats into your food costs. But 660 were interested. So
it's
Facebook
hard
is
to judge.
Yeah. It just makes it impossible to plan because, it's good in theory or good on paper, but in practice, it didn't seem to work out for me.
Yeah. It's that difficult line to walk, kind of like when we were talking about, how do you know who to trust and who not? I mean, right. It's not really the same when you're talking about your supporters because, hopefully they'll frequent the restaurant or they won't, or hopefully they'll support your business or, or they won't. But it oftentimes seems that, and that's why I liked and shared one of the posts that you had on Facebook recently where it was talking about, you want to be happy for other people and their success. Oftentimes it doesn't seem that way. And you talk about that in the book. Sometimes it seems like people just want to sort of sabotage somebody who's trying to do well, who's trying to build themselves up. And I don't know that it's just a human thing or it just, they're doing it on purpose or it's happening, a little bit of subconsciously.
All of the above. I mean, yeah, really, like I said, for as many good people that are in this community, there are some who have a great deal of sway that did not want to see this happen. And, they made sure that they talked down about it, from, any chance that they got. And so, without giving away any spoilers, I mean, it's right. Just I talk about some of the ridiculous rumors that I had to go through, but, to entertain your followers here, your listeners. Yeah. Your listeners, I just, wanderlust. Pretty innocent name. It means a strong desire to travel. Somehow, me being a upstanding school board member, upstanding member of the community with 3 children, was running a strip club. And what they got hung up on was the lust part, the lust suffix. Wanderlust means a strong desire to travel, not wherever their mind went. And
which fit with the theme of the restaurant and bringing a sort of, worldly taste
bringing
into
the world to us in the form of food, music, even though we celebrated mostly Appalachian culture, which is fantastic in and of itself. But I wanted people to have different tastes, different options, healthier options, right. Not the deep fried grease pit stuff, which is good in moderation. But I wanted my customers to live a long time. So I had some healthier options than the drive-thrus that we offer here.
Right. Well, it goes back to education, and you're all about educating, your community and beyond about, different experiences, different perspectives. If you don't have that education, you wouldn't necessarily know.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's, like I said, it was, my intentions were innocent, but it can be misconstrued. And part of that is simply because I'm an outsider. I think differently. I am different. And that's too much for some people. And that's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. I would have liked to have, from the place that is described in the book, I think it would have been a fabulous place to visit. And now that I'm back up and playing music again, I would have loved to play there.
Man, if I could only get my Rappahannock peeps up there, it would have been. It was big. The place was big enough to host a field party. So one of those, just put a little fire pit in the middle and just lounge.
Well, I love that idea. Why do you think that it is then? I mean, that small businesses, I mean, you talk about it in the book, but I mean, I'm so into these overarching themes. If your business had been allowed to succeed, right? Without all these blockades put up against, small business owners. I mean, part of me reading it, not to sound like a suspicious mind or conspiracy theorist, is like, it just, it wouldn't be good for the omnipotent they, right? Wouldn't be good because it's like, it is supporting local, it is supporting small, it is supporting, it's not just, people couldn't make money off of it. These big corporations couldn't get their piece.
Right.
And I feel like that's really what it comes down to. And one of the biggest things that we're struggling with is in this country right now. And like you said, that the pandemic kind of took the veil off that a little bit, as you see people couldn't get food. Why? Because we're not getting our food source locally. We're traveling it across the country, yes, giving people jobs and these truckers, but when we were killing truckers in the process, I mean, these huge corporations taking over.
Yeah, right. And that's just it. I mean, we saw this growing up with Walmart, taking over mom and pop shops and things like that. And the strength of the mom and pop shop mentality is, you take care of each other. The small pockets, we take care of each other. Walmart is not, or any of those big corporations aren't fit to take care of us at a local level. I mean, yeah, they shell out money to schools and things like that, and they have some good PR campaigns, but by and large,
and sometimes some good insurance benefits.
Right? Yeah. And so when push comes to shove, and something like a pandemic happens, or a national tragedy, a local tragedy, whether it's a hurricane or a flood or some kind of disaster, it's local people who band up and help each other out. And I think that's what that's the sentiment that we need to get back to. You talk about one of the things you talked about is the truckers and things of that nature. It's so funny to see folks in small communities like mine defend these big corporations, and they should be able to make as much money as they want, and unfettered capitalism, yes, for that. And meanwhile, you clearly see people around you suffering, as a result of this system. And it's not just minorities or, non-English speaking citizens. It's everyone. It impacts everyone.
Right. You say in your book, though, you are an advocate of, you're not totally against, you're not anti-capitalist, right?
No, no, there are good elements in it. The thing that we can't, they have a formula for everything, right? For inflation, for, the price of coffee, the price of corn, and, and how it goes into dog food, and some of it's used for ethanol, and all this stuff. They have all these great formulas. They don't have one that can calculate the cost of greed. And wow. The fact that it's never enough, for someone like Jeff Bezos. I love Amazon. I shop on it, and I probably shouldn't, especially
it's
after
affordable.
I say this. But if he has a 500, I think it's a 500-foot yacht or something ridiculous like that, and then he can shoot celebrities into space, I would think, it would be worthwhile to help society, starting by paying his workers a much, much better wage.
I agree. Yeah. That kind of goes what I said. I didn't want to sound like conspiracy theorists of it wouldn't help the they out there, but really it wouldn't benefit the 1%. I think that, maybe I'm sounding too optimistic now, but, I think overall it would, but I think for some reason they don't see it that way. I think
no, they don't. But here's the deal: we live in a consumer, materialistic society, right? Economy. People have to buy stuff for the economy to work.
Right. if you don't have any more money to buy stuff.
People don't have money. I mean, look at the oil industries. Wait till their quarterly profits come out this next go round. It's going to be through the roof. And it was through the roof last year. I mean, right. $22 billion split between 4 or 5 companies. That's a lot of loot going out of our pocket.
Right. I mean, I think that we have enough resources on this planet to help the, who need it. Help the people that need it.
But not everyone's greed, right?
That's true. I mean, that's another one of those issues that we've talked about, that it's like, we don't have an answer for why that is. I mean, maybe it's, maybe it goes back to the self-love. I mean, they're trying to fill that hole. I mean, that's a pretty, typical breakdown of Reddit, right? Of when is it ever going to be enough or something? And instead of,
it's not. In capitalism, there's no enough. There's no maximum wage. But there is a minimum.
Do you think that would help?
No, I don't, because all of that, it's just law. I mean, there's laws around the minimum. I mean, there's a law for a minimum wage, but people still get around it, right?
Right. There's loopholes for every law.
Yeah. And so a maximum wage, you think Elon Musk is going to accept, $1.5 billion a year as a maximum wage when he can make $200 billion? No, he's not going to accept that. And they will find a workaround for it. And I'm not sitting here hating on Elon Musk, but it's the system that made people like him possible. I mean, he's quite likely going to be the first trillionaire. It is literally impossible to work hard enough to earn $1 trillion or $1 billion. I mean, $1 billion is just unfathomable. And
I know. I'm sitting here trying to imagine
what the good I could do with $1 billion. It's just like that old Bruno Mars and Tabby song. I wish I could be a billionaire so freaking bad. I mean, man, I'd be like, oh yeah, for you, let's do this. Let's do this idea. Let's rebuild this community. Let's revitalize this. I mean, I would just be out there. Yeah.
There's so many great things you could do with that. Right. But I mean,
well, you think about we're trying to fathom $1 billion. Think about Mackenzie Scott. 2 years, she's given away $8 billion, but her wealth has gone up $20+ billion. She can't give it away fast enough. That's how messed up the system is. Even with someone with as big a heart as hers, can't give it away fast enough. So think of all the good I could do with that money. Let's say this app does take off. Things would be very, very different, in West Virginia if that happens. And that's not the reason I'm doing it, but, I am playing a part in,
But you do want it to be successful, not only just for the people that it will help, but I mean, you want to help your family, right? I mean, it wouldn't. Sure. Right. It wouldn't hurt your family if it did well financially, right? Right. I mean, I wouldn't hurt my family if Rappahannock Radio did well financially. Right. Do I want $1 trillion? No, because I can imagine all the vultures that would show up.
They will too.
After that,
just believe it.
And tell me that, why I needed to, do something with it
They're
in
everywhere.
A certain way. Mm-hmm. But gosh, this has been such an incredible conversation. I came in and you're so approachable. I'm going to be totally honest. I was so nervous about this interview more than any others because I was like, God, I know. I was like, he's a doctor. Like, this isn't just, chatting with him at like a wedding or whatever. Like, I'm trying to seriously interview this man. And like, if I mess up and he's like, oh God, what is she talking about?
You're not going to get judgment from me because I'm the king of mess ups. So. But you use that. I mean, you use it as inspiration. I mean, every time you meet an obstacle, I mean, like you said, you have to. Your redemption lies in. How did you put it? How would you put it? Your redemption lies in your, not in your expression, but in your. You have to tell your tale. Yeah, in my lessons. I mean, the only redeeming quality from this failure is helping other people avoid it. I mean, wanderlust is not coming back. And it's not that I even wanted to come back. I mean, like I said, I've moved on. I love the memories. I love the experience. I would like to visit a place like it where I didn't have to work, and go through all the stress and just kick back and enjoy the nice wines and craft beers that we had, and the good food and a good company. But, I feel like part of the reason I failed was because I was meant for more. And I really do feel that way. And I'm not sure if it's, I don't know, because the restaurant could have helped this community. I wanted to ultimately empower them by making it employee owned, and then riding off into the sunset and letting people do what they were going to do with it. Because there were a lot of folks here who had good ideas, events and things of that nature, and they could have been empowered to see that through. But I think this app, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be and exactly what I'm supposed to be doing.
You are traveling down the path that you're taking.
Yeah. Well, some rocky potholes in the way and obstacles and all that jazz.
Right. Some of the roads, get some tax money to fix those roads.
If only. You should see some of that. Yeah, but that's for another conversation.
Well, I'll say one thing, and living in you probably remember living in Rappahannock, where now it's just the more the average wage goes up, there's still a lot of people that are in need here in a small county, where everybody's looking around and being like, oh, it's getting gentrified and we have all these nice businesses and, all this and all that. And there's still the same people, the same families that have been here that, don't have much of anything. And I think that's the story. That's a lot of people's stories. And so I'm so glad that you are out there helping and talking these stories out with me and with other people. And sure. I want to know, so you're in the beta phase. So tell me what's next, just the app. You're just going to streamline, focus on the app.
Anyone can go out there now and download it. You can choose being a mender. Most people are, unless they're a certified therapist or counselor, they're going to choose mentor. And for students, they would choose the student app, and then they get on there, test the chat feature, excuse me. And then the menders can get on there and help students work through things. And just, we're checking out to see what works, what doesn't. I've already found a misconnection based on the ideas that we discussed. And so once we get that list back to the developers, they will fix it. Then next, I have to recruit an organization for the pilot phase. And I'm hoping that will take place by this summer, late June, early July, and then go through that pilot phase. That takes about 2 months. And then I want to release the app, which should have the AI chatbot on there. We're calling it an AI friend right now until it can get approved by the FDA, which should come later in the year, early part of the next year. And so from there, then I want to take it live. So we're looking at August, September. That's a pretty aggressive time frame. But that's what I'm aiming for, because
wow.
We need help now, and waiting for.
You can't wait.
Yeah, you just can't wait. There's a lot of students out there that need help, and I want to get this implemented, but do it right, of course, but
right.
implement it as soon as humanly possible.
And there'll be. That's part of the process that you go through in beta right now, is like the checks and the monitoring to make sure that, it isn't taken over by
right.
by misused.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
don't want something like that to be misused. So those are the kinks and stuff that you work out through the beta process.
And I've already been through the HIPAA certification process, which is, thank goodness I was a hurdler back in the day, because it was hoop. I'm jumping all these hoops. I think it ended up being 216 or something crazy like that. And then there's 2 other certifications, COPPA, which is a Children's Online Protection and Privacy Act, and then FERPA. I forget what that one stands for, but people can Google it. So I need all 3 of those certifications, which I'm going for now. And I should have those wrapped up within the next month or 2.
Excellent.
So it has all the certifications needed to move forward. There's for the mender side, there's a background check before they can be approved. For the therapist, there's a certification verification process. And so this isn't just an app where everyone can come in, join, and just, be abusive or, have ill intent. That they will get caught. I've put all of the precautions in place to protect children who are already vulnerable, and the last thing they need is an app that's going to prey on that vulnerability.
Yeah. I know that you will help work it out, because I know I can't see you doing it any other way, right? That your bullheadedness, you're going to feel like you'll make sure that this works. Yeah. And I'm sure it's something that you probably, you'll launch, but then you'll be checking it and making sure that it works throughout.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. We have a content moderator, Hive, and they've been working for about 6 years in that market now. So we have AI detection for videos, text content, obviously, but videos and images as well. So the child pornography or human trafficking or any other awful stuff that's taking place out there, it won't happen on this app. Yeah.
That's good to hear. I didn't think that it would, but I'm glad that you reassured.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate because I can't control everyone that's out there online, with ill intent, and but I can through my app.
Yeah. That's one good. That's about you being a dreamer and a creator, right? You can't control the ill intent that's in the world, but you can, create something and modify it so that it doesn't happen on your forum.
Exactly.
So people can find out more about Mender by going to, what is it, MNDYRR.com? Did I say it right?
MNDYRR.
I'm
sorry. MNDYRR. See, you got me twisted up now. Yes. MNDYRR.com.
MNDYRR.com.
Yep.
Yes.
Pronounced Mender.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Adam, thank you so much. I'm probably going to have you back on here in a couple months after you launch it, so we can discuss more of the world's problems and issues and how we can help in our small but giant ways.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. I'd love to. Absolutely. It's been a lot of fun, Kai. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you as well. And people should check out, you've got a podcast as well. They need to go to Foster Success.
Taking a break from that podcast because it was vultured as well. Believe it or not, the person I was working with, promised Moon and the Stars and then stopped producing it. So I've just taken a break to focus on the app. So another story for another day. But the Fostering Success is still out there. The 20 or so episodes that I have. But it is good content. I was top 3 global ranking before.
I saw that.
Yeah. But yeah, I'll get it jump started here in a little bit, but I'm probably going to tie it into the app and the communities that are out there.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, they can find me at MNDYRR.com for what I'm doing here. There will be investment opportunities in the future. And so just, stay tuned. I may even do a newsletter again. No.
Email or paper?
So, yeah. But no, they can definitely find out what's going on the site.
And they should visit, what is it? Is it AdamStarksPhD.com?
No, just AdamStarks.com. Okay. That's speaking and books. And then, if they're feeling really adventurous, books by AdamStarks.com. Some of my other creations, my fiction. My children's book is out there, so I'm multi-genre author because my mind never stops going. So.
I saw that. I saw you had a new, it's kind of new, right? A new Facebook page. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was like, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing this.
There you go. I appreciate it. I need all the support I can get, so yeah.
Yes, you do. Thank you so much for everything that you do, and,
Absolutely.
all the light that you are bringing to the darkness out there, because we surely need it. And you keep fighting the good fight for what's good, even though those vultures keep coming around.
They do, and they keep catching me. So I had a writing vulture, a publisher. And so that, again, that's another story for another day, but I will be writing that blog at some point to avoid this publisher. And avoid this podcast producer. So, yeah. I tend to attract vultures, so I'm not sure if there's something on my head that I can't see, or sucker, or something. But yeah, I
think
still
people are attracted to the light, like moths. They're attracted to light. And when people are being creative, I think, you have all sorts of people that want to be a part of it, whether that be good or bad. And unfortunately, it comes with, with the rising up and really showing yourself and being authentic. People see that, and they see the value of that, and some people see the value and take advantage of it. So I know you won't let it get you down.
No, I won't let it get me down. I do have to be a little less, naive when it comes to trusting people. But like I said, it's been an ongoing process. It's trial and error. I've met a lot of great people throughout this creative process, but again, a lot too many bad ones too.
For every one.
Yeah, well, for every two good ones, 2 or 3 good ones, there's that one out there that just is questionable.
Yeah.
So watch out for the vultures.
That's a good tagline to end.
Yeah, it is. See, I have this for my podcast. If I ever get it up and running, let me get up for a second. And I put pants on.
You didn't have your pajamas on.
The warning: beware the vultures. You have been warned. Not responsible for injury or death. Of your business. I may put that in Sharpie or something like that. But yeah, I'm hoping to be able to start that podcast this summer, because there's a lot of knowledge out there that you're just not going to find in textbooks or a traditional business book.
Right. It's experiential knowledge that, Right. Yep. Mm-hmm. And it's not all going to be, the silver lining of it. You're like, here's some dark clouds to the stuff.
Yeah. It's the dark side of entrepreneurship for sure.
But I think on that note, and what you said about you Wanderlust had its time because you were meant for bigger things. I mean, symbolically, I think of vultures as, what are they doing? Like, they're picking at anything there that is is dead and dying, right? Yeah. Not that you wanted that dream to be dead and dying or any of the others, but it's like, it's showing you your strength of like where you should, like a plant, right? Like you got to deadhead those flowers or whatever, so the plant can continue to grow, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's you showing you the way you need to grow.
Right.
And you're certainly growing in an incredible, I'm just so excited. I'm excited to release this podcast to my listeners and to be able to get back in touch with you again. And I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Adam.
Absolutely, Kai. You have yourself a wonderful day, and I look forward to the next go round.